when I was at school back in the day, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade, I don't really remember exactly when, but I remember there were a few very inspiring teachers that I had at school, and there weren't many. And if I look back at, it's so long ago, like it's 20, 30 years ago really that I've been to school, longer, probably 30, it's over 30 years ago that I've been to school. Isn't that just crazy how time just melts away? And there are only very few people that I remember, teachers that were inspiring to me, people who I respected, who I learned from, and who I just liked how they did it. It's less about what they did, it's how they did it. I think that is what we must always remember. It's about how people do it. It's not so much what they do or why they do it, it's how they do it and how we feel as a result of that. And one of those guys was my arts teacher, one of my many arts teachers that I had at school in Verden an der Aller. That was a little town in Germany, so 20,000 people living there. And it had a school that was about 1,000 years old, called the Domgymnasium. And that's technically a prep school where they prepare you to go to university. After 13 years of school in Germany, you go to university. It's all free, by the way. No one pays a penny for that privilege. So I went to that school and I was kind of prepared to go to university. Didn't work out that way. But one of the teachers that I thought was very inspiring was Lothar Bührmann. Lothar Bührmann. And he was an artist, really. If you look at his resume on his website, he still has a website. He was always an artist and made cash with being a teacher, an arts teacher. Kind of a good combination. Now my parents and I, we lived in this super tiny village called Edelsen, that was maybe, I don't know, 20 miles or so, 10, 15 miles away from Verden, which is where I went to school. So we lived in this little village, and my arts teacher, Mr. Buehrmann, he also lived in that little village. And one of the things that we kept saying to him while we made his acquaintance was always, how come you're an artist and you're living in the worst village that northern Germany has to offer? How does that come about? And one of the things that I remember that being very inspiring, what he said was, well, if you're working internationally, it really doesn't matter where you live. And I thought, you've got something there. You've got something there. As long as you live either close to an airport or in driving distance from somewhere, yes, who cares where you live, as long as that's where your heart is and as long as you feel comfortable there. So that was just one of those inspiring things. I basically sucked at school, except for creative things like music and the arts. So I always sucked at drawing, and I could never really draw or visualize things properly. But one of the things that I could always do really well was put videos together. That's kind of in my DNA. It's just as long as I can think, for literally over 30 years, I have been interested in that, and I could always do it. I was always good at that. And so many of my arts projects ended up being videos. Terrible, of course, by today's standards, from VHS to VHS editing things. But what he really liked about how I did it was that I applied what he taught us into a video. And I don't know, there's several examples. One of them that I can just think of is that you attach different meaning to things that are really different. So you hold an apple in your hand and you say, this is a banana, for example. And it's just, that's kind of an art concept that you say, well, we have reactions when we see a banana, but when you show somebody an orange instead, they go, doesn't compute. And that's kind of the reaction that artists sometimes want to convey. And that was one of those things that people, my classmates were saying, whoa, does he get an A just because he's made a video? But no, it's not the case. It's because he has applied, my teacher Lothar Bührmann was explaining, what I have been trying to teach you in arts class. And Jay was one of the guys who applied it perfectly, even though he really can't draw. And that's not a problem really, but So I'm telling you all this because ever since I left school, there was always something really comforting thinking about that man. And it's been with me for so many years, and I had always hoped that one day I was able to reach out to him and say, hey, I don't even know if you remember me, but back in the day when school really sucked and I had some of my worst moments in my entire life, if you discount the cancer story, that was at school really, because that was absolutely horrifying and terrible to me. And he was, yeah, I'm going straight, you know, you guys need to, there we go, perfect. So yes, I had hoped that one day I was gonna be able to do that, and just yesterday I found out that he died. Lothar Bührmann has died literally a week or two ago, and I only found this out from a friend of mine whom I had a long chat with, and I felt really sad about that because this is not something I had expected. I mean, yeah, we're all getting older, and I'm 47 now. I'm running straight into the 50th year of my life, and it just means my teachers that have been 40, 50 back then, 30 years ago, they're dying out. The inspiring people in my life that I can remember are dying out. And I feel upset about it because getting in touch with him and just saying thank you for the wonderful time I've had, that is something that's not going to happen anymore. And that's the upsetting part, that I had the chance and I thought, yeah, well, that's not going to run away. I can do that at any point. And I didn't. I never did it. And so, not that it may have made much of a difference to him, but you know, it makes a big difference to me, and that's a situation we can't change anymore. He's died. I don't know how. I don't know what's going to become of his family. I remember he had a daughter and a wife. I don't know if they stayed together. I mean, the last time we spoke was literally, as I said, many, many years ago. And one of the key moments that I remember about him was that because he was driving to school and I took the bus, of course, you know, I was a pupil, he was a grown-up, he had a car. And I think he dropped his daughter off at school as well, at the same school that I was going to. So there were a few occasions, it's kind of a line you don't really want to cross as a teacher, that I phoned him up in the morning and said, Mr. Buehrmann, I missed my bus. It's just one of those things that happened. It was annoying, I didn't mean to, but you know, I've missed my bus. To get to school on time, is there a chance I can cycle over to your place and can I hitch a ride with you? And as early as it was in the morning, he did it. He's brought me to school like several times, and that was just so nice. And that was almost sounds really sick and weird and twisted, but that was literally the highlight of my day. I'm hanging out silently with the grown-up that I respect in a car, going to school, joking around, while he's having, you know, 5 cigarettes, because he was a bit of a chain smoker. So I'm not sure how he died, as I said, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if it had something to do with lung cancer. But hey, he was a creative, he was an artist at heart. He was in Italy after he left the school. I think in 2003, 2007, he left the school that he and I met at and went to Italy for several years. He was then, it gets like 2-3 years just as an artist in residence in Italy. It's cool. This is what you want to do with your life, and I'm glad he did it as well. He didn't retire from being a school teacher with a golden watch and all that. No, he remained an artist to the end, and I really respect that. One of the videos that he made with another teacher at school, he was a photographer, Mr. Lichtenberg. He was into photography, and he led the kind of after-school photography department at our school. And the two of them, they knew each other since like way back, and they made a movie called We're Looking for the Reddish Green. And in painterly terms, you can't actually mix red and green, because if you put these two colors together, it'll just be nothing. It'll be like mushy gray brownish yuck color. And if you mix green and red light together in the additive way of mixing light, then you'll get white. So that doesn't help either. You can't really mix these two things together. And so the two of them made a video that was trying to explore those various aspects. Yes, Lothar Bührmann. And yeah, one of the other things that I remember was because I sucked at school. Did I mention that? Did I mention that I sucked at school back in the day? One of the things that I liked though were the extracurricular activities, and one of which was I was always associated with the movie theater that we had there, little cinema that we had there. I ended up being a projectionist there at one point, but I was always kind of associated with that. I was a fan of the movies, and I was a fan of photography, and so there came the point where they started a film festival in Verden an der Aller. Very exciting. There was a film festival, and I was on the jury, and my arts teacher Lothar Bührmann got me in, and it was mesmerizing actually. So we saw all these short movies that people had submitted for this, and I think I was the only child really. I mean, I must have been like 15. Something like that, and everyone else was like 40, 50, you know, and I was the only kind of young person on the jury who was kind of, I don't know, maybe, I think they just liked having me around, to be honest. I think that's what it was, and I liked being around them, and that was one of the few things that I really remember about community, collaborative working, and just, I think, being taken seriously. I think that was one of the things that I recognized in them dealing with me. They were not treating me like that annoying teenager with issues, which I had, you know, we all had. It's the hormonal phase. What can we do? But it was exciting because those were the moments that really shaped me as an adult, and not consciously, of course, but I do remember those types of moments, and I think those were very important to me, and they still are important to me. And this is why life is so weird. You keep all this bottled up at the back of your head without ever really sharing this with people, because, you know, those are the old days. You don't really want to share that. You maybe share the story when you were drunk, you know, but you don't really share the inspiring stories that you still think about on a day-to-day basis that technically shape everything you do in your life today, and also explain why you are where you are. I'm cycling through Miami Beach right now before starting a shift at the supermarket. You know? It's crazy, but yes, so those are the moments I remember, and I had wished that one day I could share it with him and just say, hey, you know, we don't have to be big buddies, we don't have to become great friends here, we don't have to strike up a lifelong relationship or anything, but just know that if you ever had doubts in your life about, have I made a difference to people's lives, then you have. Just know that you have. And I'm very sorry that I've missed my opportunity to tell you this while you were still alive, because now it's too late. And all I can do with this is make sure it doesn't happen again. If there are other people that are equally important to me, to you, to anyone who's watching this, make sure you tell them while they're still alive. And it doesn't matter if it's awkward and if you don't know how to do it, and if you ever send off that letter that you're going to write. But, you know, remember that we have a finite amount of time on this planet, and, you know, today isn't going to last forever. You know, it's important to remember that, and I make a habit of remembering that every day, which is why I'm so super annoyed that on this occasion it literally I missed it. I missed my moment. I missed the opportunity, and it's just, you know, that's sad. That's just very sad. I can tell you so many things about it. One of the things was that we usually had a double lesson. So 45 minutes is one lesson, and between two you either get a 5-minute break or 10-20 minute break or something like that. That's back in the days when school still finished at about 1 o'clock. Oh, wow, this is great. Anyway, we usually had that lesson, like a block lesson in arts, like in music or in physical exercise like sports and all that, so that's, you know, usually like a double lesson block. And on these arts lessons, Lothar Bührmann was always taking his 5 minutes to sit in that little kind of antechamber thing between two arts classrooms there in the new building. It's called the new building. New building is like 50 years old by the time I'm talking to you about this, and the old building by the way was 1,000 years old. So, you know, that's how old and new kind of compare there. So he goes and literally sits silently in this little room and smokes at least 2 cigarettes just so that he can have a moment to himself. And every once in a while I just snuck in and we just sat together and didn't really do all that much, but it was just nice to hang out with him, you know, and have that grown-up moment. He had a coffee, cream, cigarette. That's a pure artist. I thought maybe that's very inspiring. I like that. I really like that. And yeah, so that's one of those things. But another one was his attitude to bunking off. You know, sometimes people, not so much me, because I always enjoyed his lessons, but some people, they just weren't into art, and you know, it's just one of those things. So he kind of quite openly talked about that with people. Look, if you don't want to be here, why don't you go have coffee? And other people would say, oh, I'm going to drag you to the principal's office, young man. And he's just going, oh, why don't you just go have coffee? Well, hang on a minute, won't I get an F then? Won't I just fail the class? And Lothar Bührmann says, nah, I'm just, you know, if you don't want to be here, you don't want to be here. And you think, oh, that's an option? I didn't know that was a possibility, you know? That's just exciting. Yeah. Anyway, those are the moments that we've had, and it was literally outside the box. This was in the blue ocean, the undefined territory, and that was possible. And it's kind of, you know, line breaker, that man. Literally somebody who redefines reality for you. If you don't know any better in your little 12, 13, 14-year-old mindset, that's just, you just don't know much really, do you? So it's nice if somebody who is one of the grown-ups, one of the others that tell you what life is going to be like, who's supposed to teach you the way and all that, if he just shows you, hey, reality isn't always what you think it is. I think that is why I found that so inspiring. Reality isn't always what your mind tells you it is. And he's a perfect example of that. And I learned that at a young age. It's interesting. It almost feeds into this thing of how I landed my first job in Berlin or in Hamburg or in London. I followed exactly the same pattern there, to say, you just drive there, you turn up, you have a chat with them, they'll hire you. That's how it'll happen. And everyone else would say, well, obviously that's not how it happens. You send a CV, you never hear back, end of story. You know, or you send a CV, months later you get a rejection letter. That's how it works. That's what reality is like. And I'm thinking, nah, it's just not how it works. I remember going to Berlin after school, after I'd kind of almost been expelled from school there, being the projectionist and all that. I had, this is how I landed my first job in Berlin. I said, well, I don't think they're hiring for apprentices right now, but I convinced my mom to drive there with me from Verden to Berlin. It's about 350 kilometers. And I said, well, I'm just going to turn up there with my photography portfolio and tell him about me, and you know, this is how they're going to hire me. And literally everyone said, that's just not how it works, man. You send a letter and you wait for an invitation, if anything. And so I called them, you know, trying to play by the rules. I called them and said, hey, you know, can we make an interview? No, we're not hiring. Oh, okay. Can I speak to the man in charge? No, he's not taking any calls right now. Okay, it's cool. So I just said, let's go anyway. Let's, you know, no problem. Let's just go anyway. I'll try and type up my CV as good as possible, my resume. Trying to do a U-turn here because I'm going further away from the supermarket here. I hadn't anticipated that. It's just such a nice story. I just thought, you know, I'll tell it. It's a good occasion to get that all into one mega long video. Oh, here comes my chance. Maybe. No, it's not my chance. I'm gonna die if I do that. So I'm gonna not do that. So we drove there. It's kind of a long drive. doubt-ridden, of course. Oh, here's my chance. So doubt-ridden, but it didn't really affect me that much. I thought, no, this is how it'll work. And I was 18 at the time, you know, severely overweight, 18-year-old with massive issues. Hasn't got a proper degree from school, goes and puts his mediocre photography portfolio together and shows up at the film lab where they duplicate Hollywood blockbusters movies, you know, when the Germans have, when they can't make them in England or something like that. So I go there, very prestigious company, factory, shall I say, rather, and go there. And wanted to speak to Mr. Meyer. That was his name, Mr. Meyer. Can I go see him? Well, his office is on the 5th floor, whatever. Go right up if you got an appointment. Yeah. I'm hoping to kind of get one. So, okay, no problem. Lunch truck. Also, not what I had expected right now. So I go up. Secretary, perplexed look in her eyes, goes, who are you? And I said, I'm Versluis. I want to apply for an apprenticeship position in your fine company. She goes, you were not hiring. I think I told you that before on the phone, didn't I? Well, yeah, I was in the neighborhood and I thought, you know, maybe I'll drop by. Yeah, well, you know, we're not hiring. The end. Turns over back to the typewriter and starts typing the letter. And I said, well, I just drove over 300 kilometers. Can I at least leave my portfolio here with you that I've compiled specifically to have a chat with Mr. Meyer here? Look, it's really difficult to store this here. We're not like, you know, a storage company or anything. I said, no, I understand. And there's no chance you can just give him a call and tell him about me, that I'm literally 10 feet away from his very desk right now. So huffing and puffingly, she goes, picks up the phone, calls the guy. So very interesting. First hurdle, to like 5th hurdle, more like it, overcome by talking her, mesmerized her into calling the guy anyway. So I think my underlying thinking there was, I'm not going to leave without at least dropping this thing off, you know. And she calls, boss, happy to have a chat. Interestingly, I sit in his office. He goes, I'm so sorry that you made that long trip, but we really aren't hiring. And I said, yeah, no, I understand that. I just thought, you know, I'll introduce myself, and perhaps if a position becomes available in the future, perhaps, you know, consider me. Showed him my portfolio. He was very impressed. Just thought, you know, young guy with literally no education as such, like no artistic education as such, puts the stuff together, like large 30 by 70 centimeter blow-ups of black and white portraits and whatever else, you know. Very cool. So very impressed. He goes, we could get you in as, like, you know, one of those heavy guys that is paid even less than an apprentice, doesn't get an education, but, you know, it's something that'll get you in the company. It'll take a year and you get to know the people. Maybe after that, perhaps we can give you an apprenticeship, maybe. And I said, I'll take it. So that's how we left it. And he just had my CV and that's it. We drive back home thinking, don't really know if I want to do that or not. A week later, back at home, phone call. Yeah, hey, it's a guy at Berlin, apprenticeship department. We've just had somebody flunk out. He's not going to fill his position. Do you want it? Starts in a month. Do you want it? Can you move here that fast? I said, I will. And that was just wonderful when that happened. And what can I tell you? I had a good career. It was a good start to a great career in film and television. It's a very inspiring story, I must say. You know, I'm touched when I hear myself talk about this. It's funny, it's engaging, but it also shows it's basically the same thinking that I've applied to many of my other situations in life. Just not taking no for an answer and just going hey, this is going to work. I'm going to believe in this, and it'll turn out differently to what the rest of the world tells me how it's going to work. And I believed in it, and it happened. I made it happen. Or however it happened, I don't know. I don't know how these things work. But my point is, this is the kind of thinking I think that I got in part from one of the many inspiring people in my life, and one of them was Lothar Bührmann. Yeah, so in telling you about him, all this other stuff comes to mind, and this is why he was a very important person for me, and this is also why I wanted to thank him, and this is why I wanted to. Had I had the chance, I would have done it. I just didn't know that he was in bad health. I had never thought about the fact that time has been melting away like the snow in the sun, and that we all get older, and there will be the point where we just don't get these chances anymore, which is why for all of us it's so super important that we seize the day while we can and not waste our precious little time with shit that we don't care about. Very important.